Hey guys, it's John. You're on the JRB Tree Climbing channel. jrbtreeclimbing.com is my website, and recently I've created a Patreon for those who'd like to support me and my journey and exploration in safe climbing methods. This video is a set of options for retrievable anchors. So my number one rule for climbers, no matter how you're climbing, is that you're tied into the tree at all times. And I realize that folks climb by different methods. And so I'd like to give you a set of 6 options today. And many of these options are described in greater detail in other videos. And so I'll make sure to edit this and give you the name of any videos you need to go research. Okay, option 1 is called a running eye or a running loop. This is a sewn eye on a factory tether, and this is an alpine butterfly. I've got a video on how to tie that. And so effectively these are the same for a tether or rappel operation. So I'll just use the sewn one for this demonstration. And it's a simple matter of putting this around the tree. Now people call this a girth hitch, but this is not a girth hitch. This is a running eye. And it's quite obvious how to tie this. It's absent of many failure modes, but you do need to pass the entire rope through. And so that can be problematic in a rappel operation. You're going to spend a little more time passing that through. The number one failure mode here of this method is really that it's unstable. And you'll see folks selling and buying. I can't believe some of the stuff we're actually buying in this business. All kinds of gizmos and clothespins and clips to keep this in place. And I'd like to just show you a better way to do so. And so what I've got here is a piece of 5 feet of accessory cord. This happens to be sterling accessory cord. It's available in a number of colors. I chose this one because it's rather bright. And what we're going to do is make this a part of our tether. So this is a one-time operation here. I've got a video on how to tie the poacher's knot, the scaffold knot, and I will simply tie that on here one time. And it can stay there forever. Okay. And what we're going to do is this is going to be part of our retrieval system, but it's also going to be used to snug this up, to cinch it. And we're going to do that. Now let's get in tight here and take a look at this. What I'm going to do is create a knot we call a highwayman's hitch right here. And I do that in this fashion. I take a bite of that rope, I'm about a foot away from the end, and I've got this cinched away from the tip of the eye. I pass that through the loop, so it's behind both strands. And with the working end, I go around that bite and then follow the original path and bring a bite through. That's called a highwayman's hitch. It's also the trigger mechanism inside of the JRB hitch, which if you're familiar with that, you will be soon. We'll be talking about that later in this video. But that's a highwayman's hitch. And what we do is we just snug it up. We grab the original end and the loop, and we just pull on that, and we snug it up. And now look what happens. Now this is very controllable. Very controllable. I can cinch it onto the tree wherever I like. I can loosen it, walk it up, walk it down. If this ever gets loose, just give it a pull. Now, when it is time to rappel, so assume that this is not a tether, but a rappel rope, your retrieval line is attached here by whatever method you prefer. And once you have rappelled, you simply pull on the highwayman's hitch. I'll do so slowly so you can see it explode. And now, bring down your rappel line. Let's get in tight and watch that one more time. So I've got my running loop, my running eye on the tree, and here is my scaffold knot. I simply take a bite of that, pass it behind both strands, with the working end, form a bite around the original one, follow it back through, and bring a bite through. And then I tighten that. Right? We don't want to pull on this. If we do, it'll spill. You'll learn that lesson right away. But once we've got it in that state, it cinches and it's more easily advanced. And that's important for stick climbers who use such a move. And of course, when we're done, attach your rappel line and pull it through. Okay, so option 2 is very similar to option 1. Instead of a running loop, we're going to have a running carabiner. Now, what's really important about this is using the right kind of carabiner. You don't want to use aluminum for this. This is a steel carabiner, and in fact, I've got a link to this on my website, jrbtreeclimbing.com, in the shopping list. But this carabiner is made by Kong, their Ovalone series. It's called DNA, but it's got a 90-degree twist in it, and it prevents the gate from rubbing against the tree. So again, you'll want to be careful about using the right type of carabiner and that is appropriate for the application. But I do feel confident using steel, and especially this DNA series. But much like the prior option, it's quite unstable, especially with the weight of a steel beaner. When I put it on, I orient it such that the gate is, when I load it, the gate isn't pressing against the tree. Even if this rotates, it's really not pressing against the tree. But I've got that same issue with instability, and we're going to solve it the same way. So here I have that 5 foot of sterling 6mm cord. I'll make a quick scaffold knot. Got a separate video on how to tie the scaffold knot. And this is a one-time thing here. We're going to put that on and leave that. That's now part of my tether or my rappel line. So I put it on the tree, get it where I want, and then I set that very same highwayman's hitch. So as long as we get both of these strands, there's options for how to do it. So I'll go up through and go over the top of both, go around the back by capturing that bite, and then retrace my original path. Now if you notice, I tied this one the opposite direction, as it doesn't matter. You can tie this either way, but I get that nice and snug. And so now get it where I want it and cinch it to the tree. And to release, okay, let's see that one more time, and this time I'm going to load it with my body. Get that where we want it. And here on my line, I've got a JRB Ascender hitch in a non-jamming configuration, and so you can see me on that. After rappel. Now option 3 is the JRB Cinch. This is something that I have introduced. There's a separate video on it, and this is set. It's created with a buffalo hitch. Got a video on that, and a carabiner. Now this could be part of the rope, or it could be a separate tether. It doesn't really matter. But the idea here is we pass a bite through the rappel ring, and and then lock it with the carabiner. And I've got this carabiner quieted down. And this is extremely secure. And a nice feature is that it is advanceable with a pole. So here I've got a very small telescoping pole, and we've got friends with poles that are long enough to set this for SRT, but we can simply advance it up and then lock it on. Now I really want you stick climbers to think about using this, because we want you tied in above your stick. You want to be standing on the top of your stick and still be tied in. And so you can with the right pole, you can really get this at whatever height you need it to be. We've got a separate video on how to create this and how to set it with the pole. But that is the JRB Cinch. And when it's time to retrieve it, if you're capable of stripping the line of any devices or friction hitches, your retrieval line just goes here, and you simply pull on it and pull the whole thing through. JRB Cinch. One more time, just setting the JRB Cinch. Put it wherever you want it to be, and set. Of course, make sure the gate of the carabiner isn't engaged. Retrievals like this. Now, option 4, this is the Saddle Hunter's Hitch, and we've got a couple variants on it. So I introduced this. It was submitted to the International Guild of Knot Tires as a unique knot. It was recognized as such, but it's really just a variant of the toggled bite. And it's kind of greedy in the rope consumption profile, and you've got to be aware of that. But what we do is we pass a bite around the tree. Pass a bite around the tree, and I give myself a fair length on the working end, and I pass that bite through the 2 strands. I widen it to go around those 2 strands, and I lock it with the carabiner. Now, if you're only going to load 1 strand like we would in a tether application, you would just lock it with a biner that's attached to the end of your rope. And you can advance this to whatever position you want it on the tree, and then pulling both strands and pushing that carabiner, lock it to the tree. But it's not remotely releasable. I'm showing it to you this way because it's useful in climbing the tree if you want to use this. But at your final point of attachment, you'll want to make it remotely releasable. And I'll show you how to do that. Now, there's a separate video on this, so this is just going to be a quick demonstration. Go around, put to this point, it's exactly the same. It's exactly the same. But now I pass that top bite down through the bottom one, and I lock it in this manner. It's a soft toggle. And you can go take a look at the detailed video on that. Get it where you want it to be. It's a little less friendly to advancing it up and down the tree, and get it snug. When it's time to rappel, the last thing we do is remove our locking carabiner on those 2 strands. With it in place, it's not remotely releasable. And this gets attached to your rappel line. Sometimes that requires a little back and forth jockeying of the 2 lines to get it down. But that is the Saddle Hunter's Hitch with remote release option. Now, one detail about the Saddle Hunter's Hitch, of all the options, it is the easiest one to kind of throw up the tree a little bit before you set it. So if I want to just get this as high as possible and there's nothing behind the tree, you can kind of flip that up with really good consistency and set it way above your head. Got my carabiner here, it could be on the end. So if you're setting something without a pole and you want it as high as possible, the Saddle Hunter's Hitch is the way to go, assuming you've got enough rope to do it. Okay, next, and I'm really proud of this, this is the JRB Hitch. I introduced this hitch as a secure and remotely releasable hitch with no metal. Got a separate video on tying this for tether and rappel applications, so I'll just get on with it. This is what it's like in real time for me to tie this. what I do is decide where I want it on the tree, and then with the ratcheting motion, I fasten it. This bite, I'll secure it. Doesn't matter over or under one strand or both, but that's a fair way to give it a little extra stability. And it can be locked with the carabiner. If the carabiner was tied on the end here, which would be my recommendation, that would suffice. But with a lock, it can't be released. Another form of a lock is the line itself. With it in that position, it can't be released. And a nice feature of the JRB hitch is its overall stability. I'll load my body weight on there. When it's under load, it's hard to release this. When load has been removed, easier. See that one more time. If you're not comfortable tying it, then you shouldn't be using it. That's the JRB hitch. It's now locked. It's now loaded. Obviously, you can't do anything with it when it's locked. Once I'm down the bottom of the tree and load has been removed. Okay, and option number 6, and my favorite, just because it's the most versatile. It's obviously requires some skill to tie it, but it is the running JRB hitch. Actually uses less rope because I'm only going around the tree one time. And what I'm doing is I'm tying a JRB hitch, but on this strand. Again, I've got a dedicated video on how to tie this. So this isn't a tying video, I'll just do it in real time. And the nice thing about the running JRB hitch, of course it's a non-metal solution and it's remotely releasable, but it's also advanceable with the pole. It's a really nice feature that I can lock this, I can hook up my pole, I can walk it up the tree. And at the juncture where I want to put it on the trunk, I pull on the line while pushing on the hitch, and I will load that. Now it can roll a little bit on the trunk, and that doesn't affect its integrity. Cinches really nicely. And of course, if I had set this for rappel, I would have unlocked it, and at time I'll rappel. Now this is not an exploding hitch, so you'll still have a strand around the back of the tree, but I'll pull on that. And of course, with no branches, it'll fall back down. See that one more time. Running JRB hitch. Again, dedicated video exists on how to tie this, and so this becomes a demonstration of how I do it in real time. Leave yourself a nice long bite, get that nice and tight, put it where you want it to be, advance it with a pole if necessary and appropriate, lock it. It can be locked with a strand or it can be locked with a carabiner. In either case, try to release it. It's not going anywhere. Right? That biner won't allow it to. Load it up. Love that one-handed operation on JRB Ascender. and when it's time to rappel, we would have unlocked it. Now, choosing the right method will vary per person, and you've got to think about the different variables. For example, all of these options are strong, but some are more complex than others, and you've got to be comfortable with the complexity level and not use anything unless you're absolutely certain. Some require metal, and certain folks want to have a no metal system or avoid any clanging that might be associated with a metal system. We've got different means of setting them, the height we can set them, the ability to pole set a couple of them or throw the saddle hunter's hitch up. We've got the stability factor. The stability does vary on these, and I showed you some tricks for making any of them more stable. We got the ability to advance it. Some are easier than others to advance up and down the trunk, but you might not need that option. And then there, you know, with any of the aforementioned dimensions, there are failure modes that you have to think about. What could go wrong? The most obvious one being accidental pulling of a release line. And that's one of the reasons that whether it's the saddle hunter's hitch or whether it is the JRB hitch, I always recommend having a separate and dedicated release line, something that's a different color. Don't use your rope for that, even if it's long enough. Don't use your rope. Always use something separate. That way, when you're hanging there on the set, you'll never be tempted to grab something that is, you know, let's say, for example, your platform broke in the middle of a sit and your body just reflexively grabbed, you know, whatever it could. You never want that to be the release line. Of course, it should be locked. You just don't want that possibility. Or you're rappelling in the dark and you accidentally hook up a rappel device to the release line. We wouldn't want that, so just don't make it available. Always have a separate release line. There you go, 6 options, and there are more. I'm working on a couple right now, but I wanted to get them out in your hands so that you can use them as soon as possible. Thank you very much.